Warning: based on a true story. Parental advisory. Not suitable for children. This video is a dramatized retelling of a real-life incident. It contains graphic and intense content, including mature themes and language, violent acts and imagery, shocking and disturbing events. Parents, please note, this content is not suitable for children. We strongly advise against allowing minors to watch this video, as it may cause emotional distress or trauma. Viewer discretion is advised. This content is intended for adult audiences only. If you are easily disturbed or triggered by graphic content, please exercise caution before watching. The Milwaukee Cannibal: Secrets of a Killer and a City's Nightmare. Introduction: The shadows of Milwaukee. His neighbors, Jeffrey Dahmer was nothing more than a quiet, awkward man who kept to himself. But inside apartment 213 lay secrets so horrifying that they would haunt Milwaukee and the world forever.
I've been in law enforcement for decades. I've seen some of the worst humanity has to offer, but nothing could prepare me for the horrors inside that apartment.
Act 1. The Making of a Monster. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in Bath, Ohio in 1960. To the outside world, he seemed like a typical boy, but behind closed doors, young Jeffrey displayed an unsettling fascination with death. From an early age, Dahmer's hobbies revolved around death and decay. He would collect roadkill and dismember it, keeping trophies of bones and organs. What many brushed off as a strange curiosity was, in fact, the beginning of a horrifying descent. By his teenage years, Dahmer's isolation grew. Alcohol became his escape, and his dark fantasies began to take shape. At just 18 years old, he acted on those fantasies for the first time. Stephen Hicks was Dahmer's first victim. He lured Hicks to his home with the promise of a few beers. But when Hicks tried to leave, Dahmer couldn't let him go. In a moment of violent rage, he struck Hicks with a dumbbell, killing him. This would mark the beginning of a 13-year killing spree that would claim the lives of 17 men and boys. Act 2. The Killing Fields of Milwaukee. In 1981, Dahmer moved to Milwaukee, where his crimes escalated. His targets were often young, vulnerable men, many from marginalized communities. Dahmer preyed on their trust, using charm to lure them to his apartment. Apartment 213 became a house of horrors. Dahmer would drug his victims, strangle them, and then dismember their bodies. He kept skulls as trophies and preserved body parts in jars and freezers, but his depravity didn't stop there. Dahmer admitted to cannibalism, consuming his victims in an effort to make them a part of him.
The smell, it was awful. I complained so many times, but Jeffrey always said it was spoiled meat or the fridge breaking down. I never imagined.
Act 3. The System Fails. In 1991, 14-year-old Conorak Sinthas Enfant escaped Dahmer's apartment and sought help. Neighbors called the police, reporting a child in distress. But what happened next was a devastating failure of the justice system. Despite neighbors pleading with officers to investigate, Dahmer convinced them that Conorak was his boyfriend, claiming they had a fight. The officers returned the boy to his killer. Hours later, Conorak was dead.
I begged them to take that boy seriously. They just laughed it off. They could have saved him.
Act 4. The Breakthrough. July 22, 1991, Tracy Edwards became the man who finally ended Dahmer's reign of terror. After escaping the apartment, he led police back to the scene of the crimes.
I've seen gruesome things in my career, but this was pure evil. The Polaroids, the freezer, it was like walking into a nightmare.
Dahmer confessed to the murders in chilling detail, describing how he meticulously planned and executed each crime. His lack of remorse shocked even the most seasoned detectives. Act 5. Justice and Legacy. Jeffrey Dahmer's trial became a media spectacle. For the families, it was a chance to confront the man who had stolen so much from them. For the world, it was a glimpse into the mind of a monster.
You took my son, and you destroyed my family. How can you sit there with no emotion? You're not a person. You're a demon.
Dahmer was sentenced to 16 life terms, ensuring he would never walk free. But for the families, the pain remained. The Milwaukee Cannibal's story serves as a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind ordinary facades. It also highlights the failures of a system that allowed a predator to thrive for so long. Stories like these remind us of the courage it takes to seek justice and the resilience of those left behind. Subscribe to Storyteller Pro for more tales that delve into the darkest corners of humanity and the light that fights back. Milwaukee Cannibal, a tale of persistence, darkness, and a city haunted. Introduction: The Shadows of Milwaukee. To his neighbors, Jeffrey Dahmer was nothing more than a quiet, awkward man who kept to himself. He would wave politely in passing, offer an occasional beer, and make small talk about the weather. But inside apartment 213 lay secrets so horrifying that they would haunt Milwaukee and the world forever. What started as an unnoticed trail of disappearances would unravel into a nightmare of incomprehensible evil. Jeffrey Dahmer's world was a meticulously crafted facade. But behind the veil of politeness and mundane routines, his mind churned with unthinkable fantasies. Fantasies rooted in power, control, and an insatiable hunger for human flesh. A childhood marred by shadows. Born in 1960 in Bath Township, Ohio, Jeffrey Dahmer's childhood appeared at first glance to be unremarkable. But underneath the surface, cracks began to show. His fascination with death started early, as he collected roadkill to dissect in the woods, a habit encouraged, albeit naively, by his father, who thought it was a scientific curiosity. As he grew older, his isolation deepened. Bullied and mocked by peers, Jeffrey found solace in his own dark imagination. By the time he was a teenager, his fantasies had turned violent, centering on dominance and control over helpless victims. It was during these years that his thoughts first turned toward cannibalism, a desire to fully possess those who caught his eye. Glimpse of the monster. By the late 1970s, Dahmer's fantasies had turned into horrifying realities. His first victim, Stephen Hicks, was a chance encounter. Dahmer invited him home under the guise of sharing drinks and listening to music. But when Hicks tried to leave, Jeffrey panicked. In a fit of desperation, Dahmer struck Hicks with a dumbbell, killing him. The act unlocked something deep within, a darkness that would consume him for years to come. To erase evidence, he dismembered Hicks's body, pulverizing the bones and scattering them in the woods near his family home. Detective Patrick Kennedy, a modern-day Sherlock Holmes. Detective Patrick Kennedy was no stranger to high-profile cases. Known for his sharp intuition and relentless pursuit of justice, Kennedy was often compared to Sherlock Holmes, a man with an uncanny ability to see connections where others saw chaos.
Being a detective isn't just about evidence, it's about reading people, their movements, their pauses, the words they choose not to say. Every detail tells a story.
When Kennedy was called to investigate the horrors of apartment 213, he had no idea it would be the case that defined his career. The brutality, the depravity. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. The apartment of nightmares.
The stench hit me first. Something rancid, inhuman. And then I saw it. The Polaroids, the barrels, the freezer. I knew right then we weren't just dealing with a killer. This was evil in its purest form.
The evidence was overwhelming. Polaroids of mutilated victims, jars containing preserved organs, skulls arranged like trophies. Dahmer had created a shrine to his dark desires, a house of horrors that defied comprehension. Kennedy's charisma and resolve.
We're not just hunting a killer, we're unraveling the psyche of a monster. Every detail, every connection, it matters. Let's make sure these victims get the justice they deserve.
He tried to handcuff me. Said he wanted to show me something. When I saw the knife, I knew I had to get out of there. I ran for my life.
You did the right thing coming to us. We'll make sure he never does this again.
A city haunted. But Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes shocked the world. It was the resilience of his victims' families and the determination of detectives like Patrick Kennedy that ensured his reign of terror would end.
This case has shown us the depths of human depravity, but it's also shown us the strength of a community that refuses to be defined by one man's evil.
Jeffrey Dahmer's story is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind ordinary facades. But thanks to the tireless efforts of law enforcement, his victims' voices were heard, and justice, though delayed, was served. Milwaukee may never forget the horrors of apartment 213, but the lessons learned remind us of the courage required to confront evil head-on. Want to delve deeper into the gripping details of Jeffrey Dahmer's chilling crimes and the relentless pursuit of justice? Stay with us as we uncover every harrowing twist and turn of this case, revealing the full extent of Detective Patrick Kennedy's brilliance and bravery. Subscribe now to Storyteller Pro, where we unravel the darkest tales of humanity and shed light on the heroes who fight to make a difference. Hit that bell icon and don't miss the next chapter of this unforgettable story. Act 1. The Making of a Monster. Scene 1. A rural Ohio neighborhood in the 1960s. Bath, Ohio in the early 1960s was a peaceful community, a slice of idyllic suburban life. But behind the closed doors of one family home, darkness was quietly taking root. Jeffrey Dahmer, born in 1960, was the eldest son of Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. But inside, Jeffrey harbored an unsettling fascination, an obsession with death. While most children played baseball or built model airplanes, Jeffrey spent hours dissecting animals, his morbid curiosity driving him to collect roadkill and preserve bones. What his family dismissed as odd but harmless behavior was, in reality, an early sign of something far more sinister. Scene 2. The Makeshift Lab. The woods near Dahmer's home became his hunting grounds, not for animals to kill, but for those already dead. Jeffrey collected roadkill, dismembering and preserving parts in jars filled with formaldehyde. He called it his bone collection. What others dismissed as a strange hobby would later be seen as the precursor to his monstrous acts.
Science is about exploration, Jeff. Understanding how things work, what they're made of. You have to get your hands dirty to learn.
Encouraged by his father's enthusiasm for chemistry and biology, Jeffrey delved deeper into his dark interests. What began as curiosity soon became compulsion. Scene 3. Isolation and Descent. As Jeffrey grew older, his isolation deepened. Awkward and shy, he struggled to connect with others. Alcohol became his constant companion, numbing the growing darkness within. It was during these years that Jeffrey's fantasies began to take shape. His thoughts drifted to violence and control, fixating on the idea of possessing others completely. Scene 4. The First Victim.
Need a ride? I've got some cold beers at my place if you're interested.
In June 1978, 18-year-old Jeffrey Dahmer lured his first victim, Stephen Hicks, into his home under the pretense of friendship and free beer. what began as a casual encounter took a violent turn when Hicks tried to leave.
Thanks for the drink, man. I gotta get going.
So while Stephen Hicks attempted to leave, Dahmer panicked. In a moment of rage, he struck Hicks with a dumbbell, killing him instantly. Overcome with fear and adrenaline, Jeffrey had crossed the line from which there was no return. Scene 5. Dismemberment and disposal. Terrified of being caught, Dahmer dismembered Hicks' body in the basement of his family home. He dissolved parts of the remains in acid and buried others in the backyard. The act of murder had awakened something inside him, a need for control and possession that would drive him to kill again. But the murder of Stephen Hicks was only the beginning. For the next 13 years, Jeffrey Dahmer would lure, kill, and dismember 16 more men and boys, each act more horrific than the last. Scene 6. The making of a monster. After killing Hicks, Dahmer spiraled further into isolation. He enrolled in college but dropped out. He joined the army but was discharged for excessive drinking. His dark fantasies grew more vivid, consuming his thoughts. As Dahmer's loneliness deepened, his fantasies became more elaborate. He envisioned complete control over his victims, turning them into submissive, zombie-like companions who would never leave him. The seeds of Dahmer's monstrous crimes had been sown. What began as curiosity became compulsion, and what began with Stephen Hicks would culminate in a trail of blood that shocked the world. This is just the beginning of Jeffrey Dahmer's chilling descent into darkness. Stay tuned as we unravel the horrifying crimes, the determined detective who brought him down, and the legacy that still haunts a city. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Storyteller Pro for the next chapter of this chilling tale. Act 2. The Killing Fields of Milwaukee. Scene 1. Milwaukee's Vanishing Young Men. By 1981, Jeffrey Dahmer had moved to Milwaukee, where he escalated his crimes to horrific levels. The bustling city became his hunting ground, and his targets were often young men from marginalized communities. Many were gay, some were struggling with poverty, and all were lured by Dahmer's disarming charm.
You've got a great smile. Want to come over to my place? I've got some cold drinks and a few good movies.
Dahmer preyed on trust, luring men into his orbit with promises of companionship, drinks, and safety. But those who entered apartment 213 rarely came back out. Scene 2. Inside apartment 213. Inside apartment 213, Jeffrey Dahmer carried out crimes that defied comprehension. Victims were drugged, strangled, and dismembered. Their body parts were meticulously preserved. Skulls as trophies, organs stored in jars, and flesh consumed in grotesque ritual.
And bring any baggage of knowledge with them. I didn't want him to leave. If I consumed them, they become a part of me forever. That's all I ever wanted. Companionship that wouldn't end.
But what made Dahmer's crimes even more chilling was his calm and calculated demeanor. He acted not in a frenzy, but with cold precision, each act more horrifying than the last. Scene 3. A neighbor's suspicion.
The smell. It was awful. It seeped through the walls. I called the landlord, the police, anyone who would listen, but Jeffrey always had an excuse. He'd say it was spoiled meat or something went bad in his fridge. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew something was wrong.
I saw young men going into that apartment, but I never saw them leave. I called the police when one came running out, but they didn't listen. If only they had. So many lives could have been saved.
Scene 4. The method of the monster. Dahmer had a method, a calculated pattern. He would frequent gay bars and clubs, observing his victims from afar. Once he chose his target, he would approach with charm and a calculated ease, offering drinks or an invitation to his apartment. Once inside, Dahmer would offer spiked drinks laced with sleeping pills. As his victims drifted into unconsciousness, he enacted his horrifying rituals. For Dahmer, the act of murder was not the end, it was the beginning. He dismembered his victims with surgical precision, preserving parts of their bodies as trophies, and even consuming some in an effort to keep them with him forever. His torture study was so popular that popes and princes created guards of honor to display his torture machines when staying in his home. Scene 5. Cannibalism and Control. In his most twisted act, Dahmer admitted to cannibalism. To him, consuming his victims was a way of achieving ultimate control, a way to ensure they could never leave him. Cobwebs away.
It gave me a sense of power, a feeling that they were always with me.
Scene 6. The breaking point. As Dahmer's crimes escalated, so did the suspicions around him. But time and time again, he managed to deflect attention. Complaints from neighbors went unheeded, and opportunities to catch him were missed. But the darkness inside apartment 213 was growing too large to contain. The photographs Dahmer kept were perhaps the most chilling evidence of all. Souvenirs of his twisted acts that captured his victims in their most vulnerable state. Apartment 213 wasn't just a crime scene. It was a gateway to unspeakable horror. For over a decade, Jeffrey Dahmer's monstrous acts went unnoticed, his victims becoming shadows in the night. But darkness, no matter how deep, cannot remain hidden forever. This was only the beginning of the revelations surrounding Jeffrey Dahmer. Stay tuned as we explore the events that led to his capture and the tireless efforts of Detective Patrick Kennedy. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Storyteller Pro for the next chapter of this haunting tale. Act 3. The System Fails. Scene 1. A Cry for Help. It was May 27, 1991, when 14-year-old Colorak Sinter-Sompler escaped from Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. Dazed, bleeding, and incoherent, he became the hope for an end to Dahmer's reign of terror. What followed would become one of the most shocking failures of law enforcement in American history.
He looked like he had been through hell. He was so scared, so young. We couldn't understand much of what he was saying, but it was clear he needed help.
Scene 2. A killer's charade. As neighbors tried to convince the officers of the urgency of the situation, Jeffrey Dahmer emerged from the shadows, weaving a lie that would seal Conorak's fate.
This is my boyfriend. We have a little misunderstanding. He's just drunk, that's all. You know how it is.
I told them he wasn't drunk. He was bleeding, for God's sake. I kept saying, this is a child, look at him. But they wouldn't listen. They just kept laughing like it was some joke.
The neighbors begged the officers to take Conorak seriously. They pointed to his injuries, his obvious fear. But Dahmer, with his calm demeanor and fabricated story, convinced the police otherwise. Scene 3. Returning to the monster. The officers entered Dahmer's apartment, but failed to conduct a proper investigation. They ignored the blood-stained mattress, the foul odor that neighbors had complained about for months, and the barrels of acid hidden in plain sight.
Everything looks fine here. Just keep it down next time, all right?
We don't want to get cooled out again over a lover's quarrel.
The officers left, taking Dahmer at his word. Hours later, Conorak Sinter-Saufon was dead, strangled and dismembered by the very man they had entrusted him to. Scene 4. A community betrayed.
I told your officers that boy was in danger. How could they just leave him there? This isn't right. Something terrible is going on in that apartment.
Eric, ma'am, it was a domestic issue. We've handled it. You don't need to worry about it anymore.
Glenda Cleveland and her neighbors continued to sound the alarm, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. The police chose to believe Dahmer, dismissing the concerns of those who saw the truth. Scene 5. The Aftermath. The failure to protect Conorak Sinthras-Hobson highlighted systemic issues within law enforcement, issues of bias, negligence, and a lack of accountability. The officers involved were later suspended, but for Konorak and the other victims, it was too late.
We trusted the police to protect us, to protect him. They failed, and now we're left with this nightmare.
Scene 6. A monster unmasked. The death of Konorak Sinta marked a turning point. The walls of Dahmer's lies were closing in, and his crimes would soon come to light. This is just one chapter in the horrifying tale of Jeffrey Dahmer. Stay tuned as we uncover the events leading to his capture and the lasting impact of his crimes. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Storyteller Pro for more chilling stories of true crime and human resilience. Act 4. The Breakthrough. Scene 1. The Escape. July 22, 1991. This was the day Jeffrey Dahmer's reign of terror came to an end. Tracy Edwards, his latest intended victim, found a way to escape the predator's clutches, marking the beginning of Dahmer's downfall.
He tried to kill me. Please, you have to come with me. He's back there. He has pictures.
Scene 2. Entering the monster's lair.
Sir, we need to take a look inside.
Sure, officers, come on in. There's nothing to hide.
What the officers found inside apartment 213 would forever change their lives and the city of Milwaukee. Trebs had tried to tell the world about their visit for years, but a tragedy overcame him and he pined on his deathbed.
These are bodies. Cut apart.
The Polaroids told a story of unimaginable horror. They depicted dismembered bodies, posed grotesquely. The refrigerator contained a severed head, while jars of preserved organs lined the shelves. Side 2. Detective Kennedy arrives.
I've dealt with murderers, gangsters, and psychopaths, but this was something else entirely. It was like staring into the abyss.
The apartment was a house of horrors. Barrels of acid filled with dissolving human remains, skulls stored as trophies, and jars of preserved organs painted a picture of a killer who thrived on control and depravity. Scene 4. The Arrest.
This guy's been doing this for years. It's a miracle anyone got out alive.
Dahmer didn't resist arrest. In fact, he confessed almost immediately, detailing his crimes with a chilling lack of remorse. Scene 5. The Confession.
17 lives, Jeffrey. 17. Why?
I wanted him to stay, to never leave me. I wanted him to be a part of me forever.
So you killed them, and then you ate them?
Not all of them, just parts. It made me feel like they were still with me.
Jeffrey Dahmer's confession was as chilling as his crime. He detailed how he lured his victims with promises of money or companionship, drugged them, and murdered them. His acts of cannibalism and necrophilia shocked even the most seasoned detectives. Scene 6. The Aftermath.
I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined it was this. How could this happen here?
We failed this community. We failed the victims. But today, we have ensured that this man will never harm anyone again.
The discovery of Dahmer's crime sent shockwaves through the nation, sparking outrage and grief. For the families of his victims, the arrest was bittersweet, a step toward justice, but a reminder of the horrors their loved ones endured.
I'll never forget what I saw in that apartment, but I'll also never forget the courage it took for Tracy Edwards to escape and end this nightmare. He's the real hero in this story.
This was the tale of Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee Cannibal. Stay tuned for more stories of darkness, resilience, and justice. Subscribe to Storyteller Pro for the next chapter in true crime history. Act 5. Justice and Legacy. Scene 1. The trial begins. January 1992. The trial of Jeffrey Dahmer captivated the world. For the families of his 17 victims, it was a chance to confront the man who had stolen their loved ones, to voice their grief, and to seek justice. For the rest of the world, it was a chilling insight into the mind of a man who defied comprehension. Dahmer's lack of emotion infuriated many. To the families, he appeared remorseless, a monster hiding behind human skin. Scene 2. Victims' families speak.
You took my son from me. You took his future, his dreams, his laughter. You destroyed my family, and yet you sit there as if none of it matters. You're not a person, you're a demon, and I hope you never forget the faces of those you hurt.
You preyed on him because he was kind and trusting. You saw his humanity and used it against him. But we are here to make sure the world remembers who he was, a bright soul who deserved so much more.
The courtroom became a stage for raw grief and righteous anger. Each word spoken by the families was a testament to the lives lost and the pain left behind. Scene 3. The sentence.
Jeffrey Dahmer, you are sentenced to 16 consecutive life terms, ensuring you will never again harm another soul. Your actions were not only monstrous, but a betrayal of humanity itself. This court can offer justice, but it cannot heal the wounds you have inflicted.
The sentence ensured Dahmer would never walk free again, but for the families, the pain remained. Justice may have been served, but no punishment could bring back their loved ones. Eyes drowned by the weeping blood. Scene 4. Candlelit Vigil. The vigil was a moment of solace, a chance to remember the lives stolen by Dahmer's cruelty. Friends and families spoke of laughter, kindness, and dreams unfulfilled. In the glow of the candlelight, there was mourning, but also resilience, a shared determination to ensure the victims were never forgotten.
These were people, not numbers, not statistics, people who deserved so much more. We failed them, but we can't let their stories end here.
Scene 5. Reflections on failure. The case of Jeffrey Dahmer was not just a story of one man's evil. It was a stark reminder of systemic failures. Warnings were ignored, cries for help went unanswered, and opportunities to stop Dahmer were missed. For many, the pain of knowing this was almost as unbearable as the crimes themselves.
There's not a day that goes by where I don't think about what I saw in that apartment. But what haunts me most are the lives we could have saved if things had been different, if we had listened, if we had acted sooner.
Scene 6. A legacy of resilience. The darkness of Dahmer's crimes will forever haunt Milwaukee. But the resilience of the victims' families, the courage of those who fought for justice, and the lessons learned serve as a beacon of hope. They remind us that even in the face of unimaginable evil, the human spirit endures. The end. Stories like this remind us of the courage it takes to face the darkness and the resilience of those left behind. Don't let their stories be forgotten. Subscribe to Storyteller Pro for more tales that explore humanity's darkest corners and the light that persists.